Welcome back to the Hillside Garden. Summer has finally begun and we're already getting super hot temperatures. The rain has dried up, so I hope it rained enough to get things good and wet down there. I would like to just have a little tour around the garden, not a proper tour, but I just want to look at this guy. Wow, look at that. I want to talk about volunteer plants. When you stop mowing and you stop pulling up everything that looks like a weed or might be a weed, you'll get the volunteers popping up. We call them volunteers. Actually, a volunteer really is a crop that you maybe left seeds in the ground last year and it's popped up. So you get volunteer tomatoes, volunteer potatoes. But I think we can talk about volunteers as well in the sense of what nature throws up for us. And I want to have a look. I've got lots of these kind of plants popping up all over the garden. Things I never planted, things I might want to keep. And like I say, that's what happens when you don't mow ruthlessly and constantly. So this is supposed to be a flower bed. We've got this clary, it's called. It's native to this part of the world, popping up everywhere. So it's technically a wildflower, but it's cultivated as well. Clary, salvia clarea or something like that. Anyway, these self-seed like crazy, pop up everywhere. They're nice, why pull them up? The squirrels, or maybe humans, plant walnut trees. Unfortunately, we can't keep that. We can't really have a walnut tree here in the top part of our garden. We've got plenty elsewhere. Volunteers, more volunteers. Okay, so here we're trying to get a hedge going. This is Photinia red robin, so this is very much supposed to be the tame part of the garden. But I brought a load of half decomposed compost here with straw and stuff mixed up. And look what pops up. Look at. So you leave these squash seeds in there. It's impossible really not to have them end up sprouting if you chuck compost all over the garden. So this has popped up right in the middle of our Photinia bed. And the thing with volunteers is, they grow better really than many plants that we plant ourselves, because they've sprouted in their time, nature's time, in the perfect conditions, perfect timing, and they grow like crazy. And so this squash has come up, and I honestly see we've got something coming up there. I want to say it's some sort of courgette or zucchini, but we'll see very soon. Anyway, haven't got the heart to pull that up from our squash bed. And I think here, where I planted some flowers, nasturtiums and things around this other Photinia, we've got another one coming up. And, it's crowding out the thing I want to grow, but at the same time it's providing shade, maybe sharing some nutrients, and it's a kind of a mulch. It's better to have something growing than not growing, I always think. So squash volunteers, well, they're a very common volunteer. Some people never even plant squashes. They just literally wait for them to sprout around the garden because they're so prolific. And honestly, I think that's the best way. And by the way, if you grow squashes, there's almost no point in growing them in modules from seed, really, in my opinion. You can just stick them directly in the ground. And here's this guy again. Anyone identify him? What a beauty. Look at you. Wow. Here's our rather ugly house, which needs work. Needs the rain problem fixing down the side of the house. But we're not looking at that. Looking at our magnificent linden tree, or we call it lime tree in Britishese, even though it doesn't grow any limes. No idea why. And if you come up close, the smell is just amazing. It's in full bloom. I wish this lasted longer. This is like over in a week. You can't see them now. There's absolutely swarms of bees all over this. But this isn't a volunteer, at least maybe it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. But this is a volunteer, which I actually moved because it wasn't in a very good spot. But that is a self-seeded lime tree. By the way, they are quite prolific, and they're even kind of invasive in a way in our part of the world, because they've supplanted a lot of the oak and oak forests and stuff. But this, I think, I plan to be the successor of this tree one day, because the tree is absolutely fantastic right now. It's not really threatening the house at all. It's growing nicely. It gives us some shade when we get out of the car, but it's not going to be around forever. This little thing is growing right in its shade now, and it won't be tall enough anytime soon. It won't get enough light really to grow much. But you know, by the time this tree's on its way out, hopefully it will have forced itself up through a little bit, and one day will be the replacement for this tree, and hopefully these tuya, whatever they're called, cedar things, will be gone by then. I'm not a big fan of those anyway, but even if they're not, we'll figure something out. So that's another little volunteer that I've just allowed to grow in the garden, and got high hopes for that. Down here we have hollyhocks popping up. They really self-seed prolifically as well. More of the clary. This here, that's a volunteer hollyhock that comes up every year. It provides some fantastic flowers. You know, why would I not keep it? Why would I cut it down? Yes, it looks like a jungle, but lots of wildflowers. Are they volunteers? Well, I wouldn't, I suppose, really call them volunteers, but because they belong here, you know. But the yarrow is always comes up every year. Now, if you mow like crazy, if you mow down to the bare soil, like I've kind of done here because we need a path, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get any of this. So you're not going to get insects. You're not going to get that butterfly. You're not going to get that huge hornet or whatever it was a minute ago. By the way, this is my tomato patch. Looks like a jungle, and it probably is. But it's growing like absolute crazy, so I'm not really going to touch it too much. Not so many volunteers in there, no room for them. And, well, again, not volunteers, but native round here. This stuff. Okay, lamb quarter, nearly forgot. Lamb quarters, yeah, which you can eat. I've yet to persuade my family that that is perfectly good eating. And nettles, stinging nettles, loads of them. Again, they're a natural feature in any garden, but if you mow to death, then, well, you're not going to get any. And I want to encourage a certain amount of nettles. Even my wife was on board. She said, yeah, that makes sense, you know, having a patch of nettles, it kind of looks nice. So I think she's coming around to my way of thinking. What have we got here? Just it's some brassica. Can't remember what I planted. Not a volunteer, but we will see. There's the potato patch going completely crazy. Some of those are volunteers because I didn't get many potatoes last year. I couldn't be bothered to harvest them, so I just left them in the ground. And there's a few more around as well behind me, which I won't eat in the jungle here, which I don't think I'm going to be able to even find. But yeah, that looks like a potato, not a tomato. That's a volunteer. I never planted that, so I get some potatoes in there. Okay, let's go and see more volunteer plants. Oh, yeah, more volunteer squashes. Again, no idea what these are. Could be watermelons, could be ordinary melons. I have no idea. They're growing very close to my compost bins, so I'm just going to leave them. Lots of fertility. This is a volunteer tree of some kind of weedy, but I'll let it stay for now. By the way, this is what I do. This is my another squash patch. This isn't, well, some of these might be volunteers as well, but I did actually plant some in here because this is my third compost bay, which I don't really need now, and so it's an absolutely fantastic way, place to plant squashes, because there's unlimited fertility in there, and as long as we get some more rain, I think they're going to do really well. I think we're going to have a good squash year this year. Right, let's see what else we've got popping up. Here's another character that I mentioned in another video. This is what I would call a volunteer, although more a case of nature growing things when we let it. This is a mulberry which I never planted, and when that sprouted there, I have no idea. That must be 4 or 5 years old. I guess I didn't know what it was. I just sort of left it, didn't mow it. I may have even cut it back a couple of times, but not realizing. So we're going to get a mulberry tree there, which is fantastic. And it's in a completely random spot, you know, it's just at the end of my grapevines. But ignore the mess of the grapevines. I haven't fixed those up yet. And by the way, I've got the grapevine growing up onto this plum tree, the plum tree's probably only got a few years of life left anyway. But I like the idea of, you know, in the garden. Okay, I'm not talking about volunteers again now, but I like the idea of blending things into one another, you know, in a natural environment. Things don't grow like grapes here, fruit tree here, you know. Everything sort of mixed together. That's a food forest, in my opinion. Let's go and see anyway what else there is in the way of volunteers around here. Down here, more volunteer walnuts. We get those a lot sprouting up everywhere, so I can't keep all of those. We get a lot of volunteer fruit trees as well, plums and things coming up. If I was better at grafting and stuff, then I would, maybe I would keep some of those. Maybe I will, you know. There's some back there, if you can see there. That's a volunteer plum from this tree, and there's loads of them back there. So, yeah, maybe I can try grafting something onto them and get something more interesting. Anyway, I like the idea of a clump of plums growing here and not just, you know, the one plum in isolation. Here, by the way, I won't do a separate video on this little update on my Three Sisters garden. Again, not volunteers, but I'm just slipping in some extra info here. Extra highlights from the garden. So this is the pumpkin patch in front, or like these big summer squash. I don't know if you call them pumpkins or what. They are growing just great, and they've still got the cardboard mulch down. I think I'll leave that now, obviously, isn't it? I can't move that now. It's great for keeping it weed free. Back here it's not so weed free, but if you look, so we've got the sweet corn coming up, and this is like a purple variety. I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting something off that. We do struggle here with getting pollination, and we also struggle with just insect damage, like the stink bugs get on there, and they just end up all kind of not really edible. And amongst the sweet corn, you can probably see squash plants. I think they're just classic. Actually, they're classic courgettes or zucchini. Although there's several different types. Oh, I know what this is. No, this is the pumpkin has already extended its feelers into here. So I just need to kind of stop it from totally strangling the sweet corn. Then we've got beans. So we've got the sweet corn, we've got the beans, and we've got the various squash plants. So that's your classic Three Sisters, which the Native Americans supposedly practiced, and is in any case a nice kind of way of interplanting different things, different crops that can benefit each other, and you get more out of the same space. So let's go on and find some more volunteers, because that's what I was supposed to be talking about. Let's go down into what I'm sort of calling the food forest. It's more like a jungle at the moment. Not so much food, a lot of wildflowers. These are all natives. It's all just stuff that's come up. Another volunteer walnut. As I say, I can't keep them all. I have to pull some up. If I had, we could just grow walnuts on this land, and it would be great. We'd have a lot of walnuts, but I want to grow other stuff as well. Huge amount of insect activity here. I've seen some dragonflies this morning, which is fantastic. Butterflies. This is about leaving a good portion of the garden wild, and I'm really happy with this. And my clovers come up like crazy. I had to mow a path through here just to get through. Volunteers. Here's another volunteer. This is, I thought these were sunflowers, because I had certainly scattered some seeds. In fact, we had sunflowers growing here, and they're very tall. But now I'm wondering if that isn't Jerusalem artichoke, which would be weird, because I definitely didn't plant any Jerusalem artichoke here. So unless a couple of pieces spread, because that stuff does grow like crazy, and if you just bury a couple of bits that'll grow. So I've got something growing here, but I don't know what. There's certainly a volunteer. Great if it's sunflower, that would be really fantastic. Get some lovely flowers down here. If it's just some artichoke, well, I don't mind it spreading really. I mean, I'm mowing all around here anyway, so it's not going to spread too far, and it's more free food. So yeah, that's a perfectly acceptable volunteer in my opinion. And here's one more thing I'm going to call a volunteer, although really it's just a wild plant, wild rose. We have some nice flowers on there, and just as importantly, we have the rose hips, which are great. You can make jam out of them, tea out of them. They've got a little hit of sugar in them, so you can use them for various stuff. Only after the first frost though, so they get red and then they get sort of nice and soft in the first frost. And we got quite a few of those roses just popping up, and so really it's not a volunteer, it's a pioneer. But there is kind of overlap between these two, and I think that's just what I want to briefly talk about, and then we can wrap things up. See, here's another one growing like absolutely crazy. So volunteers and pioneers. So this is another volunteer or pioneer, depending on where you look at it. A black locust. They're kind of invasive around here. People do plant them for the wood, but they will also pop up on their own. And I've left this one. And so really this is a pioneer, not a volunteer, but a pioneer. So a pioneer, they're the first plants that move in on depleted soil and poor soil, which we very much had here. And they're the plants which nature sends to, fix a problem, which might be a lack of nitrogen. The black locust is a nitrogen fixer, so it can survive in very poor soils. It can survive with a very little water, etc., etc. And nature sends those in to be the first to start creating green matter, start mulching the earth, mulching the soil. And when we just cut everything back every time, so we just keep on hacking it back, the pioneers never get to grow. So the soil never progresses beyond the pioneer stage, beyond the straggly grass stage, when what we really want is to sort of move through this ecological succession and using these pioneers as support species gradually build up towards something more useful that we want. And to my mind, if something wants to grow, then that's the thing that will grow, right? It's the thing nature's sent to grow. And so, I do find pioneers and volunteers similar in that sense, that the volunteer is the thing that wants to grow. So let's just let it. It's probably going to grow better than anything that I've babied, watered, fertilized, or anything like that. And the same with these pioneers. They are going to come in without any help from us and do a really, really important job, bringing in insects, bringing in green matter, bringing in nitrogen, and gradually improving the soil. And this is what I am trying to do in this garden. So I'm kind of seeing volunteers and pioneers in the same way, in the same light. I'm kind of trying to let nature do its thing, and it looks messy, yes, much more messy than my neighbour's nice neat garden, which I keep comparing it to. But there is a method in my madness, and I think this is the way to go. So I say, if something wants to grow in your garden, let it grow, let it come up. If you see that you don't want it, like this guy, I forget the name now, I'm sure you know it all too well, very prolific, very invasive, but you decide, why not let it grow a little bit and then start breaking bits off, chopping and dropping, throwing it down. And there we go, we've got green stuff on the ground, improving the soil in our garden. And so I think we should stop looking at things and calling them weeds. We should let everything get at least a chance to grow in the garden, and then choose what we want to grow in the long term and promote those things. And I think this is a much more promising way to go for the planet and for our little green spaces, our little green corners of the world, like our hillside garden here. See you next time.